right, welcome back to the After the Scales podcast, episode 43, brought to you by DJD Graphics. And tonight's episode is in proud partnership with Modifieds Daily. Check out @Modifieds Daily on Instagram for your daily dose of modified photography. I'm Shaun Blight, and I'm very happy to be joined by three generations of Northeast racing royalty, the Leaty family. We've got Jan, Mike, and Alyssa. Guys, thanks very much for coming on.
Glad to be here. Nice.
So, really excited to do this. This is something that I've wanted to do, and as soon as I mentioned it to Alyssa, kind of back in the summer, she was all over it. So, thanks to Alyssa for spearheading this. Maybe we'll start with you then, Alyssa. We'll talk about your most recent racing season, and then we'll go to Mike. Just talk about 2024 and how it went for you, what you did, and any highlights and that kind of thing.
Big learning season, I'd say. And we knew that coming in. I was in the 602 class for like 2.5, 3 years. And we finally felt like I was ready to kind of make the jump to sportsman. The first couple races was really just like, I think I started in the back, like on purpose for a couple races. Just kind of getting used to the power of a sportsman engine versus the 602. Once I caught on, obviously like the whole season was learning, a lot of learning. But I definitely started to feel more comfortable in the car as time went on. My dad and grandpa are obviously amazing teachers, so I just feel like every time I go to the track, I learn a little bit more and get a little bit more confident as far as like being around other cars, because that's definitely a big thing for me. Is just like I've kind of got the handling down, being around other cars, learning how to make the right moves at the right time. That's a little bit more difficult for me right now, but I think it's coming, so I'm looking forward to next season.
Yeah, it was truthfully a rough year, 2024. It wasn't for lack of trying, that's for sure. We had decent speed in our car, but never really put a whole race together. Unfortunately, we had a lot of good qualifying and heat races, but we just couldn't put the full package together to finish well. We had a couple top fives on the ROC, but never won a race. And it was my first year driving for Jen Chadwick, the JBS Racing number 11 car, and she's phenomenal. Gives us everything we need to do well. And but being the first year, there was some growing pains, and we're trying to build that notebook with that race team. And I think, given what we learned this year, hopefully we'll have a chance to build on that for next year. But and then also the number 1 sportsman car with Jeff DeMink, we did have some really strong runs with that, and just never sealed the deal with that one either. So like I said, 2024 was a little bit of a rough year, but looking forward to rebounding next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I was setting up this episode last week or the week before, and not to embarrass you, Jan, or anything like that, but I did say, growing up as a kid here in Southern Ontario and traveling to upstate New York to watch a lot of racing, I had a couple of racing heroes when I was a kid. Being from Canada, Junior Hanley was a big one for me, and yourself. My dad would take me to Oswego and Holland and Lancaster, and I fell in love with the red, white, and blue 25 from the moment I saw it, and I said, that's my guy. And and to prove that I'm not lying, I sent this picture to Alyssa. I don't know if she's shown it to you, but this was, I think, 1995 or 96. And there we are, a couple of good-looking guys.
That's funny.
So I definitely wanted to share that. Jan, I'll just ask you, how did you get your start into racing? Tell us about your first race car and how you got into the modifieds.
Well, this could go really long, but I'll try to keep it a little short for you. A group of friends that I had in high school and myself got together in 1978 and bought a $35 car from a police auction in Rochester, and we decided we wanted to take and turn it into a street stock to run at Spencer Speedway. And we did that. We put it in my grandfather's barn and worked hard on it that winter to prepare it to go on the track. We got it on the track, and we found out a lot about what we did not know. We really weren't well prepared for the events as far as being competitive, and I wasn't prepared at all as a driver. And frankly, it took a couple of years before we even got competitive in the street stock. But eventually, you know, the fire burned hot enough where I worked hard at it, talked to people that knew about the sport, and learned and got better at it. And in about 1980, I started to actually win races, and 81 and 2, we won championships in the street stock division at different tracks, Shangri-La Speedway and Spencer Speedway. So in 83, we graduated into modified racing, and that's really the only two classes there were in our area at the time. Street stocks and modifieds, that was it. So graduated into the modifieds and started learning there.
I mean, you raced modifieds at a time. I don't think it's a secret. It was definitely the glory days for modified racing. I mean, Stefanik, the Fullers, Ruggiero, George Kent, Steve Park, Ted Christopher, Hirschman, Mike McLaughlin. I mean, what was it like going up against those guys all the time? And how did you manage to have the success you did with such stiff competition?
Well, it was a difficult time, and you named a few of the highlight names, but there were many more besides that. And the fields were pretty populated. You know, there were full fields of cars, and you actually had to run heat races and make it into the main event every week. So it was a learning experience, and you know, learning against the best is the best way, because it forces you to get better or to get out. And you know, we worked hard at it as a team, as a family. My dad and several guys that helped me over the years, we worked hard at it, and you know, we eventually did get better. And I never thought I was some kind of great natural talent, but I always thought that I was a pretty good learner. And because I stayed at it for quite a long time, eventually I got halfway decent, you know, at modified racing. And a lot of it was because of the guys you mentioned. You know, they were good teachers.
Yeah, that was going to be actually my follow-up question. Is there anyone specifically that you kind of leaned on in your younger years that really helped you out?
Well, in modified racing, it was Maynard Troyer and Richie Evans. Those are the guys that I raced with a lot in the first 2 or 3 years that I was in modifieds. And if I had a question, I could ask them, they'd tell me. If I went to a different track and I didn't feel comfortable, I could go and talk to Richie. Not so much Maynard at that time, he had retired, but I could still remember at Thompson Speedway one time, and the first time I went out there, I tried to run around the bottom like Spencer Speedway. and in the competition, the guys that were going good, they were right up at the top, you know, on the high banks. And I didn't feel comfortable up there, so I just went over to Rich and asked him, geez, what should the car feel like here? Where do I got to be? What should it feel like? And, you know, he shared some stuff with me, and those types of people to talk to made the learning curve a little better.
Oh, I don't know. I still remember my dad telling me how he went on the Thompson the first time, and Mike McLaughlin, he was right around the bottom, and Mike McLaughlin went flying around the outside of him on the first couple laps, and I thought that was a funny story.
Yeah, I thought I was at Spencer Speedway, right around the bottom on the stripe. What are those guys doing up there?
Jen, tell us about your first win, and kind of maybe even just a little bit before that, when you kind of started to think like, okay, I've kind of got this. I've got this figured out a little bit.
Well, I was fortunate enough to actually win a couple of features in my first year in modifieds down at Shangri-La Speedway. We had gone down there and tested a little bit preseason, and so I got a little feel for the place, and I had been the track champion the year before in street stocks, so I was comfortable at the track. And they did a resurfacing project on the place like mid-season. They put some kind of thin layer of asphalt over the corners, and it was really, really tough on tires. And I was a little bit lucky because, you know, the tires that we normally ran there in 83, were softer and would wear out pretty quickly, even under the old track surface conditions. But with the new track surface conditions, the track was way faster, had way more grip, and those tires wouldn't hold up for 10 laps. So I had some old tires in the trailer from Oswego that were a harder compound that I was able to put on the car after I realized what was going on with the compounds. And many of the other drivers didn't have any optional tires to put on their car. So I was fortunate. I had the right stuff with me, and some guys didn't. And we dominated. It was double features that night. And I won both of them on the same tires, while other guys were wearing out their softer compounds in 10 laps. So, we took it. But that builds confidence. Once you know you've beaten the best guys, whether it's out driving them or out thinking them or just having the right stuff, it helped us. And, we went on to win some more, one or two more races that year, and, set ourselves up to have some success.
Yep. And from a car owner's point of view, putting a little money in the bank when you win the races helps too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was huge then, for sure.
I'll ask you about the iconic car because I've talked about a lot of modified fans over the year, and a lot of people, not just me, say that that's their favorite all-time paint scheme. Where did that idea come from, and why did you end up keeping it for so long?
Well, it's kind of strange. We started my iconic paint schemes before that were black and silver cars with red stripes on them, similar to the. Sorry, puppies are having a little excitement here. Anyway, we were black and silver cars, but I got in a bad wreck in '83 at Oswego Speedway back before the lights were as good as they were now. I got run over on the back stretch. I got turned around coming out of turn 2, and Roger Treichler ran over the back of my car and blew it apart on the back stretch at Oswego. And after that, I decided I was not going to run any more black cars because you couldn't see them at night. So we switched over in '85 to red, white, and blue numbers and some yellow and so forth. But the iconic scheme that you're talking about started in 1986. And actually, a guy who still helps us on our cars and used to kind of help with graphics, Mark Tykonowitz, he used to always draw up all these schemes and bring them over to my house and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And actually, Mark Tykonowitz is the one that came up with that scheme. It was one of several dozen that he had showed me, and I picked it out from that grouping.
Maybe a tougher one for you, Jan. As big as modified racing was when you came along, it was also going through a pretty tough period in terms of losing Richie and Jim Champagne and a bunch of other guys. When did the safety of the modifieds kind of start to improve? And I mean, unfortunately, it took a lot of tragedies in the 80s for that to get better. But when did you start to see that kind of improve? And Mike, you might be able to touch on that too, because you probably would have remembered a lot of that stuff.
I will tell you that, yes, I was in several events where we lost competitors. It was in practice when we lost Richie at Martinsville. And a year or two later, it was Charlie Jarzon back there. Corky Cookman at Thompson, Tony Jankowiak at Stafford. It almost became a little bit too common. We almost, I want to say expected it, but weren't surprised when you lost a guy in these wrecks. And it was scary. It was a tough time to keep going. I had a young family at that time. I didn't want to leave them. So anyway, around 90 or so is when, things had to change. Jerry Cook and a bunch of people got together and talked over the situation and decided with the car builders, Billy Colton from Troyers and others, that they needed to soften the cars, give them crush zones. They relied on information from the OEMs and other sources to come up with ideas to make the cars safer. And then that really started to turn the corner in the early 90s.
No, sorry, I was just going to say I was young then. I was that was the late 80s, and so I can't really speak to. Obviously, I've heard a lot about it, but and I like to. I'm a modified history buff, so I know a lot about it, but I wasn't. I don't remember a lot about it, but I can speak to me having two kids that are racing. One is racing, one is going to be racing asphalt modifieds, and I feel as though they've come a really long way, and they're safe, very, very safe today, thanks to people like Billy Colton and Troy Race Cars. That these cars today I think they're one of the safest cars out there, despite the looks of how intimidating they look. I'm putting my kids in them, so that speaks to something.
Right. And obviously improvements with the tracks as well. I remember going to Oswego for the first time with the steel walls, and there are other tracks that had just guardrails in the corners and that kind of thing. Like, definitely a tough time. But you see how safe they are now. You're buckled in like an astronaut almost in those things nowadays. Mike, talk about when you got involved in modifieds. Maybe kind of talk about, because you would have raced against your dad, I believe, at some point. And maybe Jan, you can touch on that as well. What was that like? And just tell us maybe how you got involved first. We'll start there.
Sure. Well, first I started off working as a crew member on my father's, at the time, Father Light Modified Tour team. I was his tire changer on the pit stops, and just learn the ropes of the cars, and eventually decided I wanted to try racing myself. My dad was instrumental in that. We did a little bit different than most. He wasn't financially invested as much. He had me do it on my own, and I had just graduated from high school. I was in college, and I was working at Tops, believe it or not, Tops supermarkets while I was in college, and trying to own a race team. It was that was tough. We were very low budget at the time when I first started, but I survived because of my father and his knowledge, and he sped up my learning curve exponentially. And to this day, I still own my own race team because of that. Right? He didn't buy everything for me. I paid the bills, but because we were successful enough to bring in some purse money and some sponsors and some income on the side, I learned not only to be a race car driver, but to be a race team owner, and that's a very valuable thing. So, but at the time when I first started racing, my dad would kick my butt every single time. Every time I went out there, the first time I got lapped, he won the race. He was the first one to lap me. It's hard out there. We're racing against people that have done it for longer than at the time I had been alive. And things are coming full circle right now for Alyssa.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of funny, right? Obviously, my dad raced against my grandpa. Now, last season, or this past season, was the first season that I raced against my dad. And we kind of have a similar situation. Most races, I see him coming around on the outside of me, getting lapped, right? So it's just kind of funny, like, over the generations, like, how that's staying the same, right? But it kind of gives me something to look up to, right? Like, obviously my dad's an amazing race car driver, and like, oh, Papa used to lap him, right? It makes me feel a little bit better. Shows that we all have a starting spot, right?
Yeah. Jan, I wanted to ask you something else too, and maybe Mike as well. So I would say kind of back in the 80s, 90s, the NASCAR Modified series certainly got a lot more attention. I mean, it's coming back again today because of streaming. But a lot of modified guys were getting shots at, the truck series started in the mid 90s. You had the Busch series, the Cup series, Jimmy Spencer, Steve Park, the Fullers, Stefanik. Did you ever have any aspirations of going higher or any opportunities to go higher?
To be honest with you, not really. Back in the 80s, I had a a little bit of interest, late 80s, 86, 87. I had a little bit of interest of going south and a couple teasers, but didn't really pursue them. It was at a time when my boys were 7 and 3 or 4, and it was just bad timing for me. I wasn't willing to relocate them and my wife Julia and risk everything to make a stab at racing down south. And after that, we won a couple big championships and stuff, but I never really pursued it, and it never really came to me either.
Right.
I'm really the same.
Yeah.
Nowadays with NASCAR, you really need the financial backing to get your foot in the door. I mean, you look at a guy like Matt Hirschman, he's won everything there is to win under the sun, and he doesn't get a crack at it. So they're obviously not looking for people who win a lot of races. It's more about what sponsorship you can bring to the table. Right.
Maybe one for all three of you guys. So, and Jen, you mentioned earlier, you didn't have a lot of different kind of racing options. There's super modified, street stocks, modifieds kind of back in those days. With the present day, with so many different options, maybe more for Mike and Alyssa, what is it about the modifieds, obviously the family history aside, but what is it about the modified specifically that makes you so passionate about them and really draws you into them?
Well, Mike can answer this better than I can at this point in time, but from my point of view, it's the fact that it's what we know. Right. So we know our way around the cars. We know our way around the industry and the connections to build the cars and to make them perform at a high level. And so it's familiarity as opposed to jumping off the deep end with something else at this point.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's what we know, but it's racing. Everybody's the spectators see what we do on the racetrack, and that's obviously a lot of fun and what we strive to do well at. But for us, we also spend 2 full days a week working in the shop with each other as a family. Right. And that time is invaluable, right? We can we spend all that time just working on the cars, but it's also family time that we spend with each other, and it brings us all together. So I mean, the modifieds is what we know, but racing brings us together as a family. So that's why we do it.
And same thing for you, Alyssa?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have much to add on that. I definitely agree. I always tell people that working in the shop is my favorite part of racing. Like, yeah, obviously going 100 miles an hour on the racetrack is fun, but nothing beats family time, right? I mean, I think a lot of people would kill to have the relationship that we have, and just the way it puts us together as a family is amazing, and that's my favorite part about it. And I guess in terms of like, why don't we try a different car, right? Like, it's just what we have, it's what we know, that's our family, right? So
Mike, obviously you're not done racing yet, and Alyssa, you're just getting started, but I'll ask this question anyways to all three of you. You can go around the horn. Your proudest racing moment when you look back on your careers to this point for the two of you guys, but Jan, your proudest racing moment, your biggest win, anything like that really sticks out, first thing that comes to mind.
Well, for me, believe it or not, it's not any one moment. There are several. And they all kind of feel the same to me. Not one sticks out above the other. Won some big races, some big tracks, and that was fun. I remember the losses that I had more than the wins. Races I should have won. Those are the ones that stick with you. But watching Michael win his first race in street stocks and then in modifieds, brings tears to my eyes and still does. And then when Alyssa did it too, it was the same kind of feeling. It's a feeling of pride and satisfaction that is hard to come by. So those are great moments for me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I'm similar in that there's a few things that stick out from the racing career. There's a couple ROC Modified Championships. There's after those races, you have a great sense of satisfaction. I won a Maynard Troyer race, two of them actually. The one a couple years ago, really, it was a great race, and that one sticks out in my mind as well. But like my father said, from a father's point of view, I remember there was a night that Alyssa and I both won on the same night, and her first win was extra special. I got to be out there on the track right before I started racing, and I definitely remember that night as one of my all-time favorites.
He kind of stole what I was going to say there a little bit. My definitely my favorite night was the night that my dad and I won on the same night. I just remember I don't remember if it was my first win or not, honestly, but I remember him running out. He gave me a big hug, and I just remember telling him that I wanted him to go out and win, right? And he did that. So then we were in victory lane again, and the same thing happened. So that was a pretty cool night. It's just, again, family. It's all about family, right?
Yeah, so that put no pressure on you then, Mike, when Alyssa wins, and yeah, now you go do it.
Yeah. And Alyssa won she's the first woman racer to ever win at the Race of Champions on the Race of Champions weekend. So that was
that's a
pretty good one too.
Yeah,
I like that one.
hoping there's a bunch of firsts still to come. That'll be really cool. I know a lot of us are excited to watch your progression. And before I forget, for anyone watching this at any point, we have a QR code in the top left corner that'll take you to the merchandise page for Mike and Alyssa. So you can go on there and grab a shirt, support them. And Alyssa's got a segment that we're going to do. I've got one more, though. One more question for all three of you. And we always kind of like to ask this to drivers, because there's a lot of drivers, young drivers especially, that tune in. So I'll go around and ask the best piece of advice that you've gotten. And maybe Mike and Alyssa, you've had some advice passed down from your dad, your grandfather. So if you think about that, best piece of advice that you've gotten as a race car driver.
Well, mine for sure, because of my dad and grandpa, is definitely just to listen to people. Obviously, I've been around it since I was a baby, but now that I'm older and actually know, I guess, a little bit more what I'm doing, I try not to just go out there and think I know everything, right? Because my grandpa's been doing this for so long. He's a amazing driver from the stories I've heard. I don't really remember much about it, but and then my dad, obviously, I get to watch him on the track basically every night after I race, or at the same. I don't really get to watch him when I'm on the track with him, but I've watched him growing up, so I know that he knows more than most people. Because of them, I've made a lot of connections at the racetrack, friends and stuff that also race. I definitely think just listening to them, not being a self-taught driver, is a big piece of advice.
We have a excellent source of information. So I think I learn more in the race shop than I do at the racetrack. Working on the cars, putting the years of experience into the race cars. When we're setting them up and building them and whatnot. But it's I'm always just taking it in. I can't point to one thing in particular, but
for me it was yeah. For me it was best piece of advice I ever got was don't get into racing. It costs too much money. But for some reason I just didn't listen and got hooked and went racing anyway. And then from there, there's just a ton of lessons and things that you learn from people. And again, not one single piece of advice sticks out to me, but the old golden rule, do unto others as you want done upon yourself, is a pretty strong one. And that one still holds true today. So anybody who wants to get involved with racing, remember that part. And also remember that it's not all glory and checkered flags. It's mostly work and sweat and quite a few tears. So that's important for people who want to get into this to understand.
All right. So before we let you guys go, we always end our shows with our DJD Gear Rapid Fire segment. We've got 10 questions, and Alyssa is going to handle this segment. So she's got 10 questions for you, Jan and Mike. So I don't know who you want to go first, Alyssa, but you guys can each answer what she's got in store for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. Pick whoever wants to go first, right? Just
yeah.
But I've got technically I've got 11, but
okay, that's fine.
We'll see.
Always.
Okay, so the first one, why? I've always wanted to know this. Why number 25?
Well, I can take that one for you. I used to play football, and my jersey number was 52. And so when I started racing street stocks, I was number 52. And then when I changed into modifieds into 1983, Doug Hewitt had number 52. So I switched the numbers around and went to 25. Simple enough, right?
And you know why I was 25?
Yeah.
Yours makes sense.
Same reason I was number 25.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I know this one. Favorite place to eat after the races?
That has changed over the years.
Yeah.
Currently.
We could go right down the list, probably. You can start, Dad.
Well, it seems like we're hitting Applebee's a lot lately, but I don't know if that's really it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, New Smyrna was Applebee's because we wouldn't get out of there till 11 o'clock at night, and they're the only ones open. And last couple of races this year, we did that too. But I don't know if that's our favorite place, but that's the one we end up at a lot.
I think they were asking when you were racing.
Oh, I don't think there was Applebee's back then, but just kidding, there was.
Somewhere.
Well, we usually didn't eat after the races. We imbibed in a couple of cold beers, and we'd go up to what then was known as Cadero's, the Old Ridge Inn in Ontario, which became Jerry's and then became Brock's and so on and so on. So that was the place.
When I first started racing, one of my major sponsors was a place called Trade and Paint, and it was a racing themed restaurant bar on Route 104 in Ontario, just west of the Speedway. And they were a huge supporter of mine from when I first started racing. And we brought half the racetrack there after the races on a Friday night and had a good time. We'll leave it at that.
All right, the next one's just for my own personal laughter. So sorry. What's an embarrassing mistake that you've made on the track?
Go ahead. Which one? Actually, the one that's actually sticks in my mind, and there's more than one, but Oswego Speedway, Whalen Tour race. Don't remember the year, but it was in the late 80s. I was racing with a group of guys, and going into turn 3, Tom Baldwin had been trying to pass me on the inside, trying to pass me, couldn't quite get the car up enough where he could stay there. Finally going into turn 3, boom. The car turned sideways. I went flying up into the wall. Collected Jeff Fuller. We ended up sitting up against the wall, and I was sure that Tom Baldwin ran into the left rear corner of my car and spun me into the fence. So I got out of the car and I pulled the steering wheel off and I whipped it like a Frisbee at him when he came by the next time. And Jeff Fuller walks over to me and says, "Hey, just so you know, I don't think he hit you. I think your right rear tire went down going into the corner." I said, "Oh, really?" And NASCAR informed me that if I wanted to race anymore, I was going to have to drop $300 at the next event to them for a fine. So that was probably it.
Well, thank God for replay now, Jan.
Yeah, I guess.
Mine's not that good. And it was more embarrassing for just mostly myself. I think it was my second modified race ever, and I was still trying to get used to. I went from a street stock to a modified. It was a pretty big jump, and I was still trying to get used to the power. And so I was starting to race weekly at Spencer Speedway, and I came out of 4, and I stepped on the gas too hard and spun the car sideways, but I slid a long ways sideways down the front straightaway, and as the car was sliding sideways with the nose pointing towards the grandstands, it like hooked the grass on the bottom of the track and filled my car full of mud. Like when I say filled it, there was so much mud in the race car that the car was bottomed out on the ground. So
hundreds of pounds of mud. Yes.
It smelled like worms. It was awful. So that's it for me for the night. We took the rest of the night off to scoop the mud out of it. That was my second race.
Can you tell we're not dirt racers?
Say nowhere to go but up from there.
Yeah, I have more, but we'll stop there.
All right.
Okay. If you could try any other car or any car other than a modified, what would it be? Not one that you've already done.
I would love. I'll go first. I would love to try World of Outlaws, or a 410 sprint, not World of Outlaws, a 410 sprint car. I watch those, like I have Dirt Vision at home, and I watch those almost every night that they're on during the summer. So I'd love to give it a shot.
You could have asked me this 30, 40 years ago. I might have had a good answer for you, but right now I'm all good. I don't have any other desires.
That's fair.
What track that no longer exists do you wish that you could bring back to race a modified on again?
I would answer that Nazareth Speedway, the Roger Penske Pennsylvania International. That was a beautiful facility, top notch. Roger Penske, of course, was able to win a couple of Whelen Tour races there, and we always had so much fun. They always had good stuff going on in the infield at night. That was a great track.
My track that I would like to bring back would be Jukasa Speedway.
Yes.
Me
Probably.
too.
Yeah, I figured close to you probably.
Yep.
We raced there twice, and the first time we went, I believe it was the first time, I had the race won. It was a restart with 9 to go, and I spun the tires and gave the race away to actually my teammate at the time, Patrick Emmerling. He won. When I spun the tires, I got hung out on the outside, and I finished, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, something like that. And I've regretted that day ever since, and I'll never get a chance to try it again. So I'd love to go redeem myself there. And the place is beautiful.
Yep, it's still there. We're just waiting for something to happen with it. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
Okay, do you have any superstitions on race day?
Well, we were taught when I came through the ranks that 2 things. One was you could not wear green or have anything green in the pit area or on your race car. And so that was the one. And then along with that was peanuts. Peanuts were taboo. You should not have or eat any peanuts at the racetrack. I don't know if I really believed any of it, but that's what it was.
I really don't have any. I know I've heard those 2 superstitions, but not very superstitious. I think you pretty much make your own luck.
It's funny. Just interrupt real quick, Alyssa. We had Eric Rudolph on last week, and he said he still won't allow peanuts in the pits around his car, and I'm guessing he gets that from Charlie, because I had never heard that before. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yep, for sure. Definitely heard it my whole life. But
I believe that was a Richie Evans thing. I could be wrong, but that's where I think that initiated.
I actually just learned about that at Lake Erie this past year as I walked out with a Snickers bar and everybody yelled at me, and I had no idea why. So, the next one, what's the best post-race beer?
A cold one.
Yeah, cold, yeah.
Any beer in Victory Lane is a good one. How's that?
That's good.
Both of your biggest pet peeves in the race shop.
Messes. I hate messes. It doesn't matter if it's in the race shop or anywhere. Clutter, things not put away. Everything needs to be organized. That's my biggest pet peeve. I'm kind of OCD.
Yeah, I guess you got that from me because that's the way I feel too. I don't like too much junk in the way, or even like, I don't know, tires stacked everywhere end up wearing me out. Too much of anything, but mainly like tools not getting put away right. And I like to go to my toolbox and the wrenches are in the right place, the screwdrivers in the right place, not spread all over the place. So I guess that would be it. But we don't have too many. We got a good group.
Favorite racetrack that you've raced on?
I'll be quicker. I really like Lake Erie Speedway. State-of-the-art facility, multi-groove racetrack. The Modifieds put on a great show there, and I just wish we could get some more fans there to watch. But as from a driver, it's a great place to race, and like I said, the state of the art.
Yeah, it's tough for me to pick one. I've run a lot of tracks. Liked a lot of them. Probably my favorite's still New Hampshire Motor Speedway. It's been the highest of highs and the lowest of lows there for me. But I also love Richmond and love Martinsville and love Watkins Glen, and even the good old home tracks, all of them, Spencer and Lancaster, they're all great.
If you could have one weapon, like Mario Kart weapon, on your modified, what would it be?
I don't know what they have. But could you have like an oil slick thing or something?
That's a banana.
Yeah, banana peel. Yeah.
All right, I need a few of them.
I like the red shell. You can just fire that thing right after we'll go knock Matt Hirschman out.
Well, that's what the chrome horn is for, I thought.
Yeah,
well, it depends if you're ahead of somebody or behind them. If you're ahead of them, you need the banana peel.
That's right.
All right, last one here to stir the pot a little. Who's the better racer?
Oh, my dad's a better racer. Back in the day, he was the man. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. You're pretty damn good too. It's a different era. You're comparing apples to oranges in a way because it's different times and different equipment and different. I don't know. Even the cost of racing is different. Everything's different. So I'm awful proud of Mike. He does an awful good job with what we have for resources to work with.
All right. Great job, Alyssa. Just real quick before I let you guys go. 2025. I know Alyssa, your younger brother Austin, he's stepping up next year too. So maybe on behalf of him,
he's here. We can talk.
Here? Okay, sure. Yeah, if you want to throw him on, he can talk about his plans for next year, and then I'll get Mike and Alyssa. You can talk about your plans as well.
All right. Well, here's Austin.
All right.
This is, by the way, he's the only guy in the family that won a race this year, and he won.
Well,
so then, with that introduction,
we should have booted one of you guys off then. Just kidding.
But yeah, here's Austin.
Yeah, so Austin, talk about what your plans are for 2025.
I'm planning on doing a 602, get a few wins, and
get out there and start learning, just like his sister did this year, or in the sport mod.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, best of luck with that. Following in a good family footstep here.
Yeah, they're definitely going to help me a lot.
Yeah,
they
for sure.
me throughout the mic rods.
And then since we're on you anyways, Mike, talk about 2025. I assume much of the same, but
yeah. Obviously, I'm going to have the two kids racing this year. So one in the 602 and the one in the Sportsman. That's going to keep me busy. But I'll have we'll be running the ROC Modified Tour in something. Probably at least most of the races, depending on what the schedule looks like, and then drive the number 1 car for Jeff to make again in the Sportsman Series. It'll be a full schedule between my racing and then the 2 kids, and we're still up in the air as to if it'll be the 11 or the 25 on the ROC, but maybe a little bit of both. I honestly don't know yet. We haven't nailed all that down, but we are working at that.
Not much is going to change for me, I don't think. I'm obviously hoping to become a little more competitive in the sportsman class. I'm going to keep running the ROC Modified Tour. Hopefully hit a couple more shows, I think. I kind of got some new tracks this year, which was really fun. So now that I've figured them out, I kind of want to just become more competitive and just keep learning. It's really what it's about.
All right. Really appreciate your guys' time. This was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Always love hearing from it's really cool to have 3 generations of one racing family on at the same time. So best of luck to the Leatys in 2025, and Jan, enjoy your nice warm winter down there in Florida. You deserve it. And
Yeah. We'll be back up with you in a couple weeks here for a while, but it is nice here right now, I will say.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Big thanks again to the Leaty family. Man, that was really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Special thanks to Alyssa for filling in as my de facto co-host. Jacob wasn't able to make this episode. Everything's fine. He just had a commitment come up kind of last minute. So we've got one more episode this week. We're going to have Demetrius Drelos, Big Block Modified driver. He's on his way down to Charlotte for the Dirt World Finals in a few days. So we're able to squeeze him in. We're also going to be talking with Danny Sams. He's got an exciting contest that he wants to share that's going to be taking place down in Charlotte while he's racing down there. And just to catch up with him, get his thoughts going into World Finals and how his 2024 season went overall. And next week, Jacob and I will both be down in Charlotte. So we're not going to have a formal episode like we're used to filming, but we will be creating some content down there. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next episode to end the week. So again, thanks to Austin, Alyssa, Mike, and Jan. Really loved having them all on to talk about the strong, rich history of racing in the Leaty family. And I would love to do more of those where we just highlight, families with strong connections in racing, passed down from generation to generation, because that really is what racing is all about. Whether you're a fan or a driver, we've all got a story of our dad or our grandfather taking us to the racetrack. And it's really cool to hear those stories. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And special thanks to Modifieds Daily for the collaboration that we're doing on this project. And we'll see you guys on episode 44 in a couple of days.
After the Scales is proudly presented by DJD Graphics. From commercial and personal vehicles to racing bikes and cars of all makes, models, and disciplines, DJD Graphics can fully customize your vehicle to suit your needs. For more information, contact Darren and visit his website at www.djdgraphics.com. Tell him Shaun and Jacob sent you to receive special rates.